Now, there are three possible approaches to war. So I talked about insurgency and counterinsurgency, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that modifier that General McChrystal used, talking about population-centric. Okay, what does that mean? Well, there are a couple different ways you can look at war. You can look at it as terrain-centric, which is that the goal of a fighting force is to capture key terrain, and everything else is going to follow. That's positional warfare. You can talk about enemy-centric warfare, which is that the goal, and this is, this is the way when we Americans think about warfare, we usually think about it in an enemy-centric way. So it's the United States Army versus the Wehrmacht on Western Europe, and we're trying to destroy the Wehrmacht. And after we do that, everything's going to follow. All right, that's maneuver warfare, or third-generation warfare. And then you've got population-centric warfare. That's the idea that if you control the population, everything else is going to follow. That may seem a little bit counterintuitive with respect to waging war. And I should say that enemy-centric, terrain-centric, and population-centric warfare, it's not mutually exclusive, right? The two can work together. Why counterinsurgency is population-centric is not because we're gone all soft. It's not because Exum, once upon a time he used to be a hard Army Ranger and used to kill people, but now he just wants to hand out candy in markets. It's not the case. The reason that we focus on the population is in response to several very hard, cold realities about the nature of the conflict. The first is that the enemy needs the people to act in certain ways. At the very least, he needs silence. Even better, he gets acquiescence. And even better than that, he gets sympathy. So if you look at an insurgency as a staircase, at the very top you've got the insurgents, or the actual fighters. Below them you've got the bomb makers. Below them you've got the lookouts. Below them you've got people that are just silent, the neutral population. And then below them you've got the population that's friendly towards you. Now, if you conduct counterinsurgency in a heavy-handed way and just go in there shooting and killing, you turn that staircase into an escalator. So everybody moves up a couple steps. The second thing is, though, and by contrast, of course, if you conduct counterinsurgency in a different way, you isolate the guys at the top. The second reality is that the enemy is fluid, but the population is fixed. So controlling the population is doable, but destroying the enemy is not. You often hear about conflicts in guerrilla warfare where the enemy melts away into the shadows. Well, yeah, but the population doesn't. The population's fixed, so if you can protect the population, then you remove that sea among whom the guerrilla is supposed to swim like fish, to quote Mao. And then being fluid, the enemy can control his loss rate and can never be eradicated by purely enemy-centric means. Look, we've tried to do enemy-centric counterinsurgency. The Pakistanis are trying to do enemy and terrain-centric counterinsurgency in the Northwest Frontier Province right now. It doesn't work. We tried to do it in South Vietnam. It doesn't work. And then in any given area, there are multiple threat groups, but only one local population. So it's not as simple as us versus them. In all likelihood, within a certain local area, you have friendly actors, you have neutral actors, you have malign actors, and those malign actors can range from everyone from foreign fighters coming into a region to quote-unquote accidental guerrillas, what David Kilcullen calls accidental guerrillas, those who are either dollar-a-day Taliban or those who have joined the fight because maybe you went in there and in a less wise move, accidentally killed a civilian who happened to be his cousin. Again, the arithmetic in counterinsurgency warfare is a little bit different than the arithmetic in industrial warfare. In industrial warfare, you think about, okay, the enemy's got 8 guys, I've got 8 guys. If I kill 3 of his guys, he's only got 5 left, and that gives me a pretty good advantage. It's not the case in counterinsurgency warfare, because in a place like Afghanistan, especially when you're fighting as a third party, you can kill 3 guys, and then suddenly you're left with 15 guys. Well, how'd that happen? Well, you've just killed somebody's brother, you just killed their cousin, which is why you have to be very careful about how you use violence in counterinsurgency warfare. So killing high-level Taliban, okay, that's might be a desired outcome. But you start killing mid-level Taliban and low-level Taliban, at that point, all you're doing is killing people's brothers and cousins. All right, this is a bit of a statement of the obvious, but war is armed politics, and counterinsurgency is an armed variant of domestic politics in which numerous challengers compete for control over the population. Therefore, there's a fundamental difference between conducting COIN in your own country, a territory you seek to control permanently, like a colony, a friendly foreign country, or a hostile or occupied foreign country. We Americans have a bias in our own experience in counterinsurgency warfare. Well, if you look at counterinsurgency as it's been waged by the French or British, it's been a completely different historical experience. The British have waged counterinsurgency in places like Northern Ireland, which from the perspective of London at least is part of Great Britain. The French have waged counterinsurgency in places like Algeria or Indochina, which depending on your perspective is either a colony or a part of metropolitan France. From their perspective, it's on their home turf. We historically have always waged counterinsurgency as a third party. In other words, on behalf of a host nation, whether you're talking about South Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan. We're not in either place to stay and dominate or stay as a colony. It's not part of America. Again, I'm from East Tennessee, so we have conducted counterinsurgency campaigns in the American South, right? And it takes on a different flavor. But it creates different problems. So when you're conducting a counterinsurgency campaign on behalf of a host nation, we Americans often make the assumption that the interests, our interests, are going to line up with those of that of the Iraqi government or the Afghan government, and it's not always the case, right? Oftentimes we've been frustrated by the fact that Iraqi and Afghan political leaders have made decisions on the ground that have actually not been in their long-term interest, not been in the interest of peace. But if we'd only bothered to read the 2,000 years of history on democracy, we'd realize that every once in a while democracies make bad decisions, and that those leaders are actually carrying out the actions well and faithfully, carrying out the opinions and desires of their constituents. And then finally, and this is the last thing I'll say about counterinsurgency in theory at least, is that local capacity is going to drive your exit date. So the degree to which you create or you facilitate a coherent local government with existing institutions, the ability to provide social services or essential services to the population, the ability to which you create local security forces, that then allows you to withdraw. And that's very much relevant to where we are in Afghanistan right now.